And welcome back to the Retire While You Work podcast. My name is Carson Odom, wealth advisor here at Adams Wealth Partners, joined today by Myles Zuger, another wealth advisor here at Adams Wealth Partners. We are past Labor Day. The smell of fall and crispness is in the air. Football is back. NFL starts tonight, time of this recording, Thursday night football. I'm pretty much sick of the heat, personally. I don't know if you are.
I'm with you. I was in Colorado a couple weeks ago and it was 70 degrees max with no humidity. It was in like the 50s at night, crisp and cool, had to wear a jacket. And then we came back and it was warm, and I'm also ready for the fall.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. I had that experience earlier this summer in June. Went to Chicago, came back, got off the plane, and it was like literally sucking in water, trying to breathe, coming back to Nashville after having a zero humidity weekend to just full on humidity. It was wild. But on more financial topics,
that's kind of similar. We're talking about the transition of seasons, changing the seasons. Now we're going to talk about maybe the changing of a job and some things to be aware of, or maybe just some tips here.
Love it, man. That's a perfect transition. Yes. On that topic, changing of a job, a new season comes and goes. We talk about it all the time. A bucket one emergency fund, why you have it, and it's job transition. You get let go, you don't have income coming in. So today, Myles and I are going to kind of walk through some of the big things that can happen if and when you lose a job or quit a job and you're going to start a business on your own, whatever the case may be, kind of things to think through what can happen, and also how to process and make some of those decisions. I think initially, if it's not a voluntary leave, if it's, you're let go from a job because they're downsizing or something, or that's the big worry or stressor there primarily is obviously a loss of income. So all of a sudden you go from having a paycheck consistently on a weekly, monthly basis, whatever that is, to not having that. And that is why the bucket one that we talk about is absolutely so essential to every single financial plan, is because no one plans on not having income coming in. But at the end of the day, recessions can hit, unemployment can go up, and you might think that at one point in time, your company couldn't live without you. But, at the end of the day, almost all companies, they're focused on making money. And if they can't make money, they have to cut people. That can happen. So that's why bucket one, have an emergency fund, is so important, because immediately it can eliminate the one burden or the one, kind of burden on your shoulders of putting food on the table and paying your bills on a monthly basis just by having enough cash in the bank.
Yep. And I think that's why bucket two is just as important for people maybe who are new listeners or just aren't as familiar with our planning process. But bucket two is just really a brokerage investment account in your name that helps to provide liquidity through stocks and bonds. I think that's why it's just as important as a bucket one for maybe times when a job loss and before that next job is a little bit longer period than expected or planned for if you do spend through that emergency fund, another place to go to for liquidity rather than 401ks, IRAs, which have penalties and taxes due for any withdrawals.
Yep. And for those of you who aren't familiar, bucket one is your classic emergency fund, somewhere between 3 to 12 months worth of expenses, just in a bank. And 3 to 12 months worth of expenses simply means, imagine you did lose your job. Obviously, the best time to fund a bucket one is prior to losing a job, prior to this changing of the seasons, transitionary period. Think about if you lost your job, if you had zero income coming in, obviously your budget's going to look different. You're going to be a lot tighter, and you're not going to be spending money like you were potentially whenever you had a job and you had income coming in. So think, just to make ends meet on a monthly basis, what would it take for you to live? And this is why I feel like countless times on this podcast, we've talked about expense tracking software and apps that are out there. There's dozens of them. Use one, even if it's not for the sake of budgeting, use it just to track your expenses. So you have some idea, what does it take for me to live on a monthly basis? Do that. Making numbers up. Maybe it takes you $5,000, $10,000 to live on a monthly basis. Let's say 10 for easy math. at least have $30,000 in a bank account sitting there that you don't touch on a routine basis. And for some, it's so hard to sit here and say 30 grand, that's a lot of cash sitting in the bank. It's there by design for a what if scenario and to save yourself. And it's just like insurance. Insurance, if you never need it, feels like a bad investment. But at the same time, insurance is one of the best investments you could ever make if you end up needing it, just like an emergency fund. That's bucket one. Going on to bucket three, skipping over bucket two, that's a retirement account, stuff you can't touch until you're 59 and a half. Bucket two, we also call an extension of your emergency fund. So once you've got bucket one funded, great. Bucket three, you're capped out on what you can contribute to here. Can't touch it till you're 59 and a half. That's long term. There in the middle, you've got your middle bucket where all your extra savings go. And it can be an extension of your emergency fund where maybe your job loss lasts 5 months. You completely eliminate your bucket one. Then you can tap into your bucket two because, like Myles said, it's just in a broken.
I think, yeah, I mean, the importance of those for as you're transitioning jobs. I mean, there's times when a job transition is good. You took a new job, maybe that means more salary, higher pay. You're excited about it. There's also times when changing jobs and job transitions are maybe not so great. If that is, maybe because your company was downsizing and you got fired or laid off. I think times like that can be a little more stressful. So I think the importance of the buckets and the proper financial planning is obvious. I mean, it's important in both scenarios, but I think it's obviously much more important in the scenario where you lose your job or are laid off because you're going to be relying on those funds. Whereas if you are taking a new job with more salary, call it a promotion, ideally in that scenario, there's more excess cash available to be able to build those buckets out and save more and put more in retirement accounts, put more in investment accounts to further progress the financial plan for the better versus having to rely on those buckets for withdrawals and income, et cetera.
Yep. Yep. That's right. Kind of another thing to be aware of. So you may have had a retirement plan whenever you were at your previous job. So that opens up a discussion around, okay, what do I do with this old 401k? If you don't do anything, it can stay there. And if it stays there, so long as it meets the plan requirements, probably, it can stay invested. It can stay invested in the stock market. You're just no longer employed by the company. So that's one of the options you have. You've got a second option is you can move it if and when you get hired again, your new company has a 401k. You can move it into that new company's 401k. And then third, you have the option of taking it, doing what's called a rollover, which is taking it out of that 401k plan and moving it into your IRA or Roth IRA if you're a client here at Raymond James, wherever you may have that account opened up at. I
guess there's a fourth option as well, which is cash it out, but
yeah,
probably not advised because you're going to pay taxes on that as well as a 10% penalty in most cases.
If you're not 59 and a half.
Yep. Yes. If you're not 59 and a half, in most cases, there are a few cases where that penalty, taxes are always owed. A few cases where the 10% penalties may be waived, but if you're just pulling not to spend it, chances are you're going to get that hit with that 10% penalty also.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. Also, when it comes to health insurance, that can also be kind of a big stress factor just because health insurance is so important and the whole health insurance landscape is extremely complicated here in the United States. But a lot of times if you work for a big company, health insurance is pretty much always, it's relatively inexpensive. Now, there's something called COBRA. You can extend your insurance, but you pay your employee and employer costs to extend your coverage. I believe, if I remember right, it's for 18 months. Does that sound right?
That sounds right. I think there are some scenarios where it can, I'm fuzzy on that one. I think where it can maybe go longer depending on a couple different scenarios. But yes, I plan for 18 months in general.
So it will be more expensive, but it's a way to keep your health insurance just to make sure you don't lose that until you can find another job that offers you some new health insurance coverage.
Especially if you're dealing with I would advise that, especially if you're dealing with some sort of like illness or pre-existing condition. That way you're not having to change doctors and you can stick with all your same doctors and you know exactly how your plan works, even if it costs you a little bit more in the short term. At least you're able to stick with all the same coverage, care, et cetera, that you already have and are comfortable with.
Exactly right. Yep. Um, the biggest, so that's, health insurance. There's also the 401k side of stuff and managing your bucket one, making sure you make ends meet. And, there's also some, I think we've talked about mainly if you get let go from your job, but on the other side of that, there's also the pros. This can be an opportunity. I feel like we have this conversation all the times where somebody gets let go, whether again, voluntary or involuntary, where you can kind of come back and reset and you can get out of this mindset of just like, this is my job. I'm not going to leave. I'm going to be in it for X amount of years. All of a sudden, something happens. You can kind of have um, a grounding moment of like, okay, what's my dream? Where do I want to be with my life when it comes to my finances and what I want to do? Do I want to go right back into the corporate world and start working for another 20 years until I can retire? Or maybe that's where you can start to shift through your dreams and goals and start to understand, okay, I've got this much saved up. I thought I was going to be working, but actually I'm not. Maybe there's a different mindset towards your finances and how you want to save and goals that you want to accomplish. So it can kind of be um, an opportunity to come back and reset your long-term financial planning goals. And a great way to incorporate your advisor, if you're a client of ours, incorporate us. So because then you can start dreaming, and that's where a lot of the fun conversations start to happen. Is, oh, I didn't, what if I never thought about this possibility, but now that I lost my job, what if I do this? What if I work part-time and, travel the world or, buy a camper and go drive around the US, whatever the case is. It can kind of be an exciting opportunity to find out what's next.
Yeah, I can think of a couple clients that I've worked with. I mean, really in the past year that, I mean, they didn't really love their job, but the money was good. And then a lot of them lived the lifestyle that they wanted to live. And I mean, they were really kind of planning for their exit in maybe 3, 4, 5 years away. But through maybe a layoff or a firing or just really a come to Jesus kind of meeting with their bosses and a mutual separation, they maybe left that job. And really, to your point, Carson, it was like one of the best things that ever happened to them because it forced them out of a job they didn't love. They got a little bit of severance, which obviously helps in a scenario like that to be able to kind of figure out what's next. But now it pushed them to like pursue a passion that they love doing and they're way more passionate about. They wake up excited about it every day versus some job that they, were at because the money was good and it was just kind of like in the rat race of it and not loving it, not enjoying it. And now they're doing something they love and they're like excited about it. And they figured out a way, somewhat maybe because they were forced to, but also because they had spent time thinking about it previously to where they're like figuring out how to make money from this. And that's now their job and where they're having income coming from. And it's something they enjoy. And versus being in a job that they're stressed about, trying to figure out how to get out of, they get to go do this every day. And they, something that because they're passionate about it, they can probably do it maybe forever because they just really enjoy doing it. And it's kind of like kind of like a second lease on a career that is going to be what they do from now on.
However you work, that's it. I mean, truly, it almost gets like you said. I mean, it's what a great opportunity. And there are, the old mindset of retirement in the United States, just as David talked about in his book, is broken. That you don't need to work until you're 70 years old, save up millions upon millions of dollars. There's so many different ways for retirement to look. Um, and a lot of times with people we work with, it's possible to stop working a lot sooner than some may realize. So I would say use that as an opportunity. Talk with us. Maybe you're in a spot where you feel like you're stuck. Talk with us. If you're a client of ours, that's such a great time to go through our planning software that we have and kind of talk about all the what if scenarios or opportunities that may be out there. So
Yeah. I think in a lot of times, like as you're doing this transition, if it's one that you're maybe getting to do more voluntary, or whether it's looking at early retirement and you're going to do something part-time, or just looking for what that next kind of stepping stone is in your career, it's really a good time where you can take stock of like your finances and what all you have out there and like really realize what all you have and start the financial planning process with somebody like us to help take you through that transition and put a good plan together. And it's also a good time to just like, if there's an income change for the better focus on that budget and like, where is this extra income going to go into my plan? Because we've often found that if people are now making more money, if they don't have a plan for it, they're probably just going to spend it. And maybe it's on wasteful things when really it could have been put as part of their financial plan. It's important to do both. Maybe they take a few more trips each year, but it doesn't all just need to be wasted. It should be, used and put into some sort of financial plan in a good way, to just maybe allows them to retire a couple years earlier or help out grandkids or kids, whatever that may be, if they're wanting to. And so it's just a great time to, through a transition, take stock of what's there, work on the budget, and just kind of review things and have a plan in place.
That's good. So good stuff. Ultimately, something happens, call us. That's what we're here for. So I think that's the majority of everything we wanted to knock out with going through a transition and changing of the seasons there. So if we can help, as always, Myles and our whole team is here to help walk through those conversations. If you're a client or even if you're not a client, that's a great way to kick off a relationship to see how we can help. So
what's one tip for somebody going through a job change that you have?
That's good. I would say don't rush anything. Take a deep breath, meaning a few days, whatever it might be. Process the emotions because that's a big life change. Don't suppress the emotions, be aware of them. I feel like we talk about this when it comes to investments and watching the stock market. Don't suppress emotions with the stock market. Even as professionals, we have emotions with the stock market. We get emotional to a degree when it comes to seeing the market drop 3% in a single day. We see that, we have emotions. It's just whether or not you act on those emotions. We talk it out with each other, whatever the stock market's doing that day. You go through a job change, take a deep breath, process it, talk it through with somebody, whether it's in the professional setting or on a personal setting, family member, best friend, and open up your emotions to process it, and then allow yourself to fully engage with yourself and your family's goals to say, okay, what's next? Where do I see our lives going from here? So that would be my 2 cents. What about you?
Kind of similar. I think mine would just be to have a trusted, like a team of advisors or just close friends, family that you can have these conversations with to bounce ideas off of, and not just be spinning your wheels or spinning these ideas around in your head, because you're just going to keep probably coming back to the same thing or not thinking things through logically by getting somebody else's opinion on things. So mine would be just to have a team in place that's trusted, you can bounce ideas off of, and not just be trying to go at this yourself. I think it's important to get other opinions. So sometimes, not all the time on everything, but I think on something that's as big as a job transition, especially if it's a big one, it's good to have a team in place to help you out with it.
Trusted advisors, a team of trusted advisors, for sure. That's good. Well, perfect. Thanks for joining us again on another episode of the Retire While You Work podcast. We'll be back next week, and enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the football, and we'll be back soon.
Have a great weekend.
Any opinions are those of myself and not necessarily those of Raymond James. Expressions of opinion are as of this date and are subject to change without notice. The information contained in these podcasts do not purport to be a complete description of the securities market or developments referred to in this material. The information has been obtained from sources considered to be reliable, but we do not guarantee that the foregoing material is accurate or complete. Every investor situation is unique, and you should consider your investment goals, risk tolerance, and time horizon before making any investment. Prior to making an investment decision, please consult with your financial advisor about your individual situation. Any hypothetical examples are for illustration purposes only. Actual investor results will vary. Raymond James does not provide legal or tax services. Please discuss these matters with the appropriate professional.